and I've just been really enjoying. I've presented once with her, and so I learned so much every time that I hear her present. But her work has been focusing recently on designing for mental health and well-being, and doing climate-appropriate designs and promoting equitable access to healthy and humane urban environments and nature. As Sharon said, she's been organizing the Emergency Schoolyard Design Volunteers for our national COVID-19 outdoor learning initiative. So we're super grateful for all the work she's done there. And in 2017, the Landscape Architecture Foundation selected Claire as one of the inaugural fellows for innovation and leadership, to explore school design that supports student mental health, well-being, and safety. And her school, she's coming out with a book in 2021 called Schools That Heal, Designed with Mental Health in Mind. So we can look forward to that. But I will turn it over to you now, Claire, to take us through a wonderful presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited to be here and working with the Outdoor Learning Initiative. Today, I'm going to share a few lessons learned from Schools That Heal, designed with mental health in mind. For 50 years, research has shown that viewing and being in nature calms our breath, reduces our heart rates, reduces stress, anxiety, and brings community together. Nature is especially helpful for people experiencing trauma. Our children and our families are experiencing the stress and trauma of the pandemic, historic wildfires in California, and an increasingly uncertain world. And for many children, even before COVID, school is or was their safe space. Before 2020, a groundbreaking survey of 17,000 people found that 2/3 of the general population suffered from at least one traumatic adverse childhood experience, and around 20% experienced 3 or more. Adverse childhood experiences result in trauma. The symptoms are often invisible or misleading. Students might act out their fear with anger or hyperactivity or by completely checking out. Education experts suggest treating all students with care, knowing that the likelihood is that they are struggling from adversity. A 2016 Los Angeles Unified School District study found that of students screened, 50% suffered moderate to severe PTSD, and 98% had experienced at least one traumatic event. These rates are likely similar in most city school districts. And today's generation of youth is defined by eco-anxiety, school shootings, a global pandemic, and social uprisings against systemic racism. Too many schools where children spend the majority of their young lives, at least before pandemic, are designed in ways that increase stress, anxiety, and depression rather than relieve it. Despite the fact that we know natural environments boost the immune system, improve academic outcomes, and help heal trauma, our bias towards buildings shows in the tiny number of articles, experts, teachers, or parents advocating for using outdoor space. I've found 3 main principles of design strategies that support students' mental health. Create environments that nurture a sense of belonging, provide nature-full places, and inspire awe, curiosity, or wonder. I'm going to show you some examples of how to do this. Nurture a sense of belonging. Despite the fact that students have the most at stake from their school design, they're rarely involved in the design process. The simple act of asking students what they experience and need at school gives us important insights into how schools are used and perceived. It also helps students feel valued and heard, both vital ingredients in nurturing a sense of community and belonging in children and adolescents. Our spring school design studio at Cal Poly Pomona works with local students and teachers to reimagine what their schools could be like. And these are three schools from last spring: Willard Elementary School in Pasadena, Cleveland High School in Los Angeles, or Reseda, and Bridges Academy in Studio City, all in Southern California. No matter what the ages of the students are, They know their campus and how it makes them feel, and which places work and which places don't work. By listening to our students and our teachers, we honor them, and we also learn from them what they really need and want. We need to create a welcoming entry and edges to the school campus. This helps students and their families feel connected to campus. Which of these entries feels more inviting? This is a school that was built in the 20s and then renovated in the 70s due to earthquake damage. Open entries with clear front doors, as you can see in the original design, convey a sense of welcome and certainty to visitors, students, and the greater community. On campus, we need to organize spaces logically. And this can happen in our outside spaces for schools that are already built, or for an entire campus for schools undergoing renovation. This is an activity map for an existing high school showing high activity and noise zones in red, medium and yellow, and quiet areas in green. Students suffering from trauma or sensory integration disorders need places that are quiet to restore their well-being and smooth transitions between noise and activity levels. Here's what a campus organized by activity level might look like, with all the high activity places like the cafeteria, gyms, and sports fields in one corner, and locating buildings to block noise or transition into quieter areas. We also need to honor students' lived experiences and histories. This could mean showcasing art or growing and serving foods that reflect students' cultures or traditions. The joint use community garden at Fremont High School, shown here, invites community members in to work with students, harvest vegetables and fruits, and host community events like free farmers markets, garden workshops, and community meals. The high school also has one of 12 wellness centers that the Los Angeles Unified School District recently built to support mental and physical health for both students and community members. And the garden functions as an adjunct space for that wellness center. Honoring lived experiences also means understanding how students learn. Not all students learn well by reading or through traditional lectures. This physics garden at Pomona College allows students to feel and experience the physical forces they're learning about. The swing in the background is up during a physics lecture. The bench turns into a seesaw that you can see in front of those three people standing there. And this merry-go-round at the forefront allows students to experiment with centrifugal force. It lets children with learning differences feel successful as students. And this kind of garden also allows teachers to see students succeed in a variety of learning landscapes. Where they might have students failing in the classroom, they might see them in a new light if they see them succeed in hands-on activities. Even in the most natural settings, we need to find design opportunities to invite and welcome all abilities, ages, and experience levels. Again and again, students ask for quiet places where they can go to de-stress. Most schools have nowhere students can go that's quiet or out of the way. If they even have those spaces, students are likely not allowed to go there. Small spaces away from activity can provide respite, as well as places to hold community circles for restorative justice, where students and teachers can repair their relationships with each other, themselves, and the world. Students rarely have enough places to sit at lunch, for instance. This is a Los Angeles high school, and seating is so unusual and rare that it's students often don't eat lunch because there's nowhere to sit and enjoy it. Let alone other places like allowing students to lie down, walk, rock, swing. All of these activities are shown to reduce stress and allow students to come back into their bodies. Students, we need to understand, deserve to be comfortable. Teachers deserve to be comfortable. Scarcity of seating or anything else creates competition and hierarchy. And especially now after COVID-19, we need to provide plenty of seating and places where students can rest and recuperate, like this hammock grove at East Tennessee State University. This need to find comfort through movement it helps explain why people of all ages, from infant to seniors, find comfort in swinging or walking. Next, we can look to provide natureful environments. Designing with nature can reveal or bring back natural processes. This was the site of a hidden spring on our campus at Cal Poly Pomona 5 years ago. It was covered by irises and introduced vinca, and the science department, one of them you can see on the left here looking for a spring, raised donation money to unearth the springs that used to be here as a learning environment. This is the same location last fall. A new walkway brings students along the series of seeps and springs on an accessible path of travel. Native plants bring wildlife, and boulders in an outdoor classroom, which you can sort of start seeing at the very left of your picture, invite students to sit and watch the water bubbling up and wildlife returning to the site. It's become a favorite space for students, not just when they're learning biology, but to just come and enjoy lunch or study between classes. Big open areas make students feel less safe and also correlate with more student crime and disorderly conduct. We can take the opportunity here in a high school, pretty typical high school with lots of asphalt and then a field behind, to separate those spaces with trees planted strategically just to break up the area. Provide shade where students eat and congregate. Here's an example of a schoolyard designed specifically with mental health in mind. This is in a poor immigrant neighborhood in Berlin, designed with students and the community to reduce stress, reduce trauma. The trees and gardens break up a large courtyard, which was previously mostly paved, and provides plenty of contemplative places. Students can sit along low walls, the boulders, steps, and platforms placed around the grounds. The trees and shrubs break up the space, and you can see provides this beautiful green respite. The students love the school, and the community comes in over the summers and weekends to take care of the landscape. Views of trees helps reduce stress during and after tests when students can see them from classrooms as well, and it boosts academic performance. So we have an opportunity to place trees where students can see them from classroom and cafeteria windows, such as this courtyard at Marshall High School, which is surrounded by classroom windows, generous classroom windows. Of course, this is only effective if we work with administrators and teachers to uncover windows and forget the myth that all eyes and attention in the classroom must be on the teacher. Students need and deserve visual access to trees and gardens to restore attention and reduce stress so that they can learn. And teachers need and deserve those green views as well to reduce their own heart rates and stress levels. We can provide natural experiences for experiential learning. This is an elementary school in Portsmouth, United Kingdom, with a simple row of two rows of trees planted near each other to allow students to feel what it feels like to take a walk through the woods. The rest of the schoolyard, while it appears generous, is actually marsh and highly unusable. It's pretty common for maybe reasons that most of you can understand, for schools to be built in floodplains, marshes, old stream beds, fault lines, and other less than desirable land. So we can take that inconvenience and create an opportunity. The Campbell Elementary School Wetland Lab, designed by our own Nancy Stranisti, took advantage of the soggy grounds to recreate a wetland habitat for children to explore and learn from. Children need places where they can test their balance, their strength, and agility. These images taken by Sharon at a schoolyard in Berlin shows that nature play gives students a sense where they can test their limits, learn to climb and explore gradually. This builds their confidence as well as their strength and balance, and a physical sense of their ability of their bodies in space. And the unique school design creates a strong attachment to the place, such as this carved stone climbing wall, which the children made themselves with the guidance of a local stone carver. The last grouping of strategies is about inspiring awe by designing for wonder, beauty, and awe. Researchers at UC Berkeley, in a project called Project Awe, found that awe-inspiring experiences like sunsets, artworks, music, and grand nature improve our mental health and bring us together. 75% of people answered that the experiences that bring them awe are natural phenomenon. But it can also be art or shared sports events, from art that speaks different narratives to each individual, to discovering small creatures in mundane environments. During moments of stress or anxiety, these are the special places and moments that become anchors for us to hold on to, and they develop an attachment to place for students that improves mental health and a sense of community and belonging. Students whose curiosity is sparked, who are inspired, awed, or simply comfortable are more likely to show up to school and be ready to learn. A couple examples from schools that have been designed with these principles in mind. This is Eagle Rock Elementary School, where my children went to school, and it was designed as a collaboration between the school community, teachers, parents, students, and administrators, the LA Unified School District, as well as expert researchers like Dr. Marcy Rainey on the right here was studying student behavior. Dr. Bevan Aschenmiller, the PTA president, is also an environmental economist. And then Sharon Danks, you can see here, advised us on the design as we created ideas to share with the community. We replaced 21,000 square feet of asphalt with a native learning garden, with tree rows to shade the play yard and break it up, and a large central park-like space dotted with shade trees. The design is a little funny. You can see the sort of rectangular lawn area morphing into the park. That's because we wanted to minimize the amount of demolition and cost. The park area in the center is shaped that way because the rectangular area to the left is where one of the kickball backstops already was. Now it's one of the two kickball diamonds is grass and the other is asphalt. And the circular grassy area with the trees was the least used area on the playground, which Dr. Rainey found during her observations. We positioned that park between the handball wall and basketball court and lunch shelter to avoid removing any infrastructure and to keep an area clear for fire access. Dr. Rainey and her students observed students on the playground to determine where the best used and least used areas were. This allowed us to keep the areas like the handball court and basketball area that were really well used and transform just the underutilized areas of campus. In her longitudinal study, Dr. Rainey found that after the improvements, which you can see here right after planting, Antisocial behaviors dropped by 50%, and physical activity, especially in fifth graders and with girls, increased. The design broke up the large expanse of asphalt with simple tree rows that also intercept rainwater before it floods the old school building's basement. And a learning garden surrounded by a small hill planted with trees and plants that attract birds and butterflies comes alive during recess, which I'll show you through this video. This is what this schoolyard looked like before the transformation. You can see it's pretty typical asphalt schoolyard. Kids are sort of wandering around. Some of them are playing vigorously with handball. On to the right, you can't really see, but there's a basketball court that's pretty well used. And then the rest of the area is pretty bleak asphalt. This is the students leaving, and then you'll hear.
It's been fantastic. I mean, they're running, they're playing, they're tumbling. It's inviting a lot more creativity. There are all kinds of different surfaces to explore, logs to climb on, and stumps to jump off of. So it invites just sort of a different interaction with the environment than they get on your basic asphalt.
The second school is Webster Middle School, which was designed as a stormwater improvement. It was part of the California State Water Resources DROPS program to clean and capture urban runoff while educating students and communities about watershed health. And the school faced quite a few issues. It was built in 1954, and 10 years after it was built, the two major interstate highways, if you're familiar with Southern California, it's the 10 and the 405, were built just adjacent, practically adjacent to the school. The few trees that were left on campus after its, 80 years, 70 years, were suffering after years of drought. And a good section of the field circled there in blue was marshy and unusable, and it flooded the neighbors' yards during heavy rains. The school was selected as one of 5 by the Los Angeles Unified School District because of its need for an asphalt repair. The district wanted to reduce the amount of asphalt it put back while fixing the pavement. So while I was working with Studio MLA, we designed the stormwater strategies, and with really a focus on where those improvements could be made so that they benefited students in class and outside of class. We designed the interventions in the front entry garden, for instance, between classroom buildings, which you can see in the green highlighted areas between those long rectangular buildings. Those are classrooms. And then along that western edge that flooded, which you can see in the bottom right of that plan. The front entry garden renovation replaced a decorative lawn and shrubs that used quite a bit of water with a habitat garden. This is right after planting last spring. The previously barren courtyards between classroom buildings, as you can see here, were replaced with a viewing gardens and stormwater demonstration. You can see the downspouts on the left come down and water that riparian biofiltration soil, and then signs tell the students what's happening. And the classroom windows, once they are opened by teachers, will have a beautiful green view. The soggy edge of the field became a wide riparian habitat and biofiltration soil. The DROPS program was planned and implemented through a collaboration with nonprofits, which included the Council for Watershed Health, which provided technical assistance and is training the school district on how to, watershed friendly maintenance strategies so that the landscapes are taken care of in a responsible way that allows them to keep going. And they're also monitoring the stormwater and learning outcomes. Tree people worked with the school community on outreach and environmental education, And this school is one that we'll be tracking to see how it works. It was finished shortly before COVID-19, so we haven't gotten to see the benefits in action. We can build public health, equity, and resilience to climate change and give students hope for a better future, but by designing schools with mental health in mind. We can design school environments that nurture and nourish our students and teachers, give them places for respite and places to be whole. The physical design of our schools can become a social safety net, improving the lives of the hundreds of or thousands of children and teenagers that attend each day, and supporting the teachers and staff who are there to help them. Now more than ever, we need to create schools that heal. Thank you. The stormwater management design, and then halfway through our planning, the civil engineer found that the stormwater catchment basin that we were planning to tie into was old enough that it was likely asbestos lined, and we weren't able to do that. So we had to look at other strategies. The lawn, which, you know, a lot of water districts might think is too much water on a site, you're using water where before it was just asphalt, was a strategy to reduce the amount of runoff and cool the school grounds. So we had to really focus on communicating what the benefits were, even benefits that might seem in other cases like disadvantages, like having to irrigate a lawn in Southern California. I don't know if that's exactly answering your question, but the marshy areas, you know, I've seen a ton of schools, including one of the high schools that was shown there, that were built on creeks, former creeks. And students, while some schools are trying to create creek-like settings in their school grounds for demonstration, other schools have very much this opportunity to actually bring back a creek that was once there. Instead of hiding it or trying to channel it and drain it. Does that answer your question, Christy?
Sorry, it took me a minute to get off mute. The process, absolutely, of looking at something that previously has been thought of as a disadvantage and trying to find where it might fit, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm struck by the irony that water continues to flummox and delight all of us, whether it's frozen or running. So yeah, thank you, Claire, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Claire, one more question as we close. I think it was just, could you tell us, in this time of COVID, I mean, these ideas are relevant all the time. And it's a reminder that we did all that, we do this work before, you know, pre-COVID, this work was relevant. It will be relevant post-COVID, and it's definitely relevant now during this time where mental health is having a lot of stress. Can you tell us what you think schools can do to help reduce stress and use what you know about landscape during these times of COVID as we bring learning outdoors as a COVID response?
You mean as we start reopening schools?
Reopening schools and bringing classes outside, what are how does that help mental health specifically, and what can schools do to make those environments have the most benefits, like adding plants, for example, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to understand that our bodies and minds are not separate from the environment we inhabit, the environments that we inhabit, and they're actually evolved with them. So trees and gardens are they're not just pretty to look at. They actually allow us to disconnect from our stress. And like, I have a garden outside my window, and whenever I need a break from my lectures, I look outside, and the leaves, the movement, all of those things bring us into a sort of a fascination, a quiet fascination, a restful fascination. This is what the Kaplan's environmental psychologists describe as described with their attention restoration theory that a lot of this work is based on. That restful fascination can be achieved through really easily through nature, water moving, a tree, a few plants in a raised bed for a temporary classroom divide. It's important to think about ways not just to bring that in temporarily, but to also then reduce the other things that really increase our stress, like noise. When noise echoing and reverberating, that should be a primary consideration when we're locating outdoor classrooms and separating them. So a lot of our design volunteers are looking at ways to separate those outdoor classrooms with things like planters with trees in them or smaller shrubs. And that's really important to consider as being a health resource, not just a beautification. That word kind of minimizes the opportunity there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing that incredible presentation and your thoughts. And we did record this, and we will later this week put it up on our website. And so thank you, Claire.